Okay. So it's so basically it's we are discussing this GraphQL like a 2.0 release. So we have like a stage them all as like all the API and TCK JAS and etc. So there's one thing with CCR, so compatible implementation. So we use the OpenLiberty 2204-beta for running through. Basically, we checked in the API, the kind of the 2.0-RC3, which is identical to the 2.0 release. So it's now it's kind of the I think there's confusion, or there's a kind of different understanding for this link. So spec name, version, download the URL for this CCR record for releasing this 2.0 release. And does this need to point to the kind of the like a staged repo, or we just directly put to the RC? So it's in the past, we have been using the release candidate, which is identical to the final to release the spec. So it's basically so to avoid the chicken egg issue. But we make sure like the final staged JAS are identical to the RC ones. So I mean, in the TCK like process, we kind of in the certification and etc. didn't declare. This is kind of the, I think is the API RCs are acceptable. So what about the TCKs? So should we treat the TCK RC X the I mean same as like the final stage, the final release?
So a correction just straight away is that when we use small y implementations to do CCRs, we never use the RCs to do CCRs unless we want to do a CCR for that specific RC, right? So when we're saying that we always done it that way, that's not correct. So on when we did, for instance, in a couple of CCRs that we filled for small y, we always use the final APIs and TCKs and referencing them on the CCR, right? So that's why we have multiple discussions about this, about like requiring the APIs that are not public yet, or the TCK is not public yet, and we do have to link to a ephemeral or a temporary repository because that's what the staging repo is, right? So if this was done in the past, and apparently it was because you did link something on the REST client and it did pass the vote, then I think that was a mistake, or we were not paying attention. But in my opinion, I mean, why are we doing all of this process if in the end we're not even testing the actual binaries that we are releasing, even though we know that they are the same? But
well, yeah, we don't know that they're the same. We can
I mean,
hope that they're the same.
We have like a big assurance, or we have like 99% sure that they are the same, but in fact, this, I mean, in the end, you're not testing the actual thing that you're releasing, right?
I think
Yeah, I just wanted to make a quick comment, because every time this topic comes up, there's two aspects of it which get confused. One aspect of it is what people are putting inside their servers. That is a totally different, not related topic. And then there's the actual TCK binary itself that you pass. You are required to pass the final TCK. Someone has to prove that the final TCK can be passed. That doesn't in any way relate to what you stick in your server. You can put RCs in there. You can put API jars you type in by hand. It's okay.
Right. So I think this might be kind of the misunderstanding. However, what you said, David, is kind of workable. In this case, like open liberty, for example, we can put RCs in and to be able to get a runtime. And then we just like test the RCs and all passed. But with that runtime, because and then we stage the RC, and then they can directly run the test, run the runtime against the staged like TCK gel.
Right.
So
Exactly.
in this case, kind of avoid the chicken egg situation. Also, we did discuss and reach conclusion for this chicken egg situation on the mailing list. But kind of I think is over the days of the years, and the kind of the gradually fall into a different understanding again. So with that, I think is I'm okay. Like for the what you said. So basically, runtime is feel free to check in the RCs and etc. But for the CCRs, as long as running against the final TCK is acceptable, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
And that's the understanding that I had when we concluded the conversation. But I could tell, and it was really difficult to get people to see that they were conflating the two things, the API
Yeah.
jars and the TCK jars. You know,
yeah,
they're not the same. We just need, it's just, you know, the CCR just has to be against the final TCK. Someone has to prove that that can be passed.
right. Okay. So in this case, I will properly kind of clarify on the TCK process with the PR to make it absolutely clear. So it's because when I read the process many times, it never occurred to me it's kind of the need to use the final TCKs and etc.
I think, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think a graphical explanation of that release process with a compatible implementation that certifies everything is in a good shape would be a good idea to add to the TCK process, as mentioned.
That was great, Jan. Let us know when you get that finished.
Yeah, go ahead to do yeah.
Are you volunteering?
Yes, I can
Great.
do that. Not
That would be
today,
fantastic.
but I made that one, and
Yeah.
I can add another one.
That would be
Yeah,
that'd be wonderful.
that would be good. So basically, it's kind of the APIs and etc. Is kind of we're not mandating the thing, but mandating the TCK.
Yeah,
That's the point that I'm not completely sure about, right? Because on the Jakarta side, you do have signature tests.
Yeah, that's the point that I was going to raise, that we should get those in place. If
because right now we don't have them. So basically you can write whatever you want on your APIs if you're using NRC, if you're using your own coded API, which because you don't have signature tests, then I think that's not really trustable, right? Because you can change the APIs in such a way to pass the TCK and then go against the spirit of the actual API jar that's going final.
Right.
That's a good point. And sorry, David, one reason to rewrite the API and not use the artifact that is included with the spec was the licensing of the API, right?
If correct, that is one of the reasons people do that.
And we don't have that at MicroProfile because it's the Apache license by default.
I mean, that's not necessarily true. If you had a GPL-based license, you would not be able to ship an Apache license jar. Yeah,
but in MicroProfile, other than in Jakarta, only the Apache license is allowed, right?
Say that again?
in MicroProfile, and that's a difference between MicroProfile and Jakarta. The default and the only allowed license for the API artifact is the Apache license, right?
No, we ship from MicroProfile the Apache license, but there isn't anything stopping someone from creating an implementation of MicroProfile, including the API jars, under a license that they choose.
Yeah, that's allowed, but we don't have that need as we have in Jakarta EE to do that, because everybody can use that license.
Well, as I said, there are licenses that are not. There are open source licenses that are more open. Well, I wouldn't say more open. There are more open source licenses like the GPL that don't combine well with the Apache license. So those people would have to create their own.
Yeah, then we need signature tests.
So basically, two things, right? So I think probably doesn't make sense. And suddenly we said, okay, introduce signature test and then block GraphQL because we have released the MicroProfile 5 and without requiring this. I think for GraphQL, I make a proposal. Basically, we can run GraphQL against the final TCK, and we can just put up the ballot again. The other thing is for the signature test. So that's another task. So it's who want to do the signature test. So we have been releasing this until today, and we didn't have a signature test. How much effort involved?
Yeah, I don't know that we necessarily. I agree with you what you're saying. We don't need to block any votes because we don't have signature tests. This is something that we should have, and it doesn't necessarily mean that it has to happen before any more votes can go forward because we are trying to get releases out the door. But we should just decide when we want to get this done and plan it in our year. It will take a while. It's not going to be a couple days. So we have, I'm assuming, other votes that we might want to get through right now, or is it just this one?
So far, I think just this one.
Okay. Yes, I mean, we do the best we can with this vote, which is going to be as good as what we've done in the past. And then, yeah, if we decide that we want to add signature tests, which I think would be a good idea, we just need to have a conversation about how that happens, which is the conversation you're trying to start. So,
yeah,
I would like to add about the signature test. We face an issue with messaging, right? And this issue is that SmallRye is repackaging messaging APIs with some additional methods there and passing TCK tests. And we are taking the APIs and can't pass the TCK tests, right? So if signature tests were there since the beginning, it wouldn't be an issue, right? Simply because repackaged APIs would pass signature tests because of the additional stuff, right? So I'm kind of voting with my two hands to add signature tests eventually to all MicroProfile APIs.
That would be cool. And I think we could say that is a requirement for the specs that will be included in 6.0.
Yeah, I think let's aim for the next umbrella release, like a signature test. And so it's who want to volunteer that to lead the creating the signature test. So where to put the signature test? Is that in every spec, or we have now we have the the requirement to create basically put this more like a platform TTKs.
in Jakarta, each TCK has signature tests. They're usually at the end of running all the other TCK, whatever the TCK tests are. So you know, there are signature tests in the platform TCK, and then there are signature tests in each of the component API tests, TCKs.
And I think that makes sense, because if you want to build something that is compatible to one or two specifications only, then must ensure only that too.
Also, I don't think that it's, I mean, trying to force a volunteer for, I mean, that they should be done by each spec team, right? I mean, I don't think that you should have like a single person trying to do all of this for everything. So each spec team, each implementation team should work on their own things, right?
Yeah, I kind of think like at least give them a guidance. So the guidance bit, like I mean, has more experience.
The person that I'm aware of that has all the experience with the signature test is Scott Marlowe.
Right. Maybe
he's quite busy right now, but he's the guy. I mean, like if I took the task, I would have to go ask him. So
right, I see. So
you know,
maybe it's a good point, David. Maybe is I will reach out to Scott tomorrow. Maybe it's kind of the next technical call and ask him to like just give us kind of, I mean, 15 minutes or half an hour kind of like education regarding the kind of the signature test.
yeah, if he has a willingness, that'd be great.
Yeah, okay, I reach out to him to see what he says. And then it's kind of, we just need to write down the kind of guidance so that I can give to at least for standalone specs and yes, a spec team need to provide. I agree with you, Roberto. But for platform TCKs, yeah, we work as a team to see. But with Scott's help, maybe it's kind of clearer what kind of things need to be in the standalone spec, what kind of things need to be in the platform. So, okay, so with that, I think is kind of the two things. So I will call out this Bala. So I will update the CCR and then rerun the open liberty beta against the final stage of the TCK and produce new result, put up for a vote again. Is that kind of understandable and makes sense?
It works for me. The existing vote has been updated a couple times already. I'm personally okay if you just keep the vote open and run those tests, and then the few of us who are waiting for those results can add our +1s.
Okay. In that case, I just work on the update this in a couple.
So then, just process-wise, we should just extend the vote to 32.
Another week,
Yeah.
another week or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, I will extend the vote for a week. I will work on that ASAP. Hopefully tomorrow we'll get things running and yeah. Okay, so that's good. Let me see. And then okay, and then I will clarify the TCK process, and then Yan, you're going to create a graph.
Yes.
Okay. So the next thing is kind of when to move the Java source level to Java 11. I think we discussed, maybe this time we discussed from a different angle. So are we in agreement? Or what do you think? Like we update Java 11 at the same time as align with the Java EE 10 core profile, or we don't want to have this link. We want to do it independently.
When we adopt Jakarta E10 core profile, we have to align with the source level, right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
we can do it before, but that we discussed it. It doesn't make sense really. Just no value in that regard. But when we do the core profile adoption, we have to. But once we create a bit too big release, then so we cannot really split it up without the right value, but also maybe not combine it because it's too much. But I'm not sure if that's correct. But can we just go with it? Maybe just to do both things, adopt and go to Java 11 then.
Right.
I think one aspect might be important. If Jakarta E10 will not have a core profile soon, and we want to align MicroProfile 6.0 to the Jakarta E10, then we have to do that too. So
exactly, yeah.
Shall we just say align with the Jakarta E10?
Yeah, since Jakarta E10 bumps the level to Java 11 core profile or no core profile, it will bump the release.
Yeah.
The source level.
Yeah, true. If at the moment it is still conversation about core profile, but let's just say keep it vague. Yeah. So are there any other different opinions? In this case, we just trying to consolidate the major update. So jump to Java 11 and also align with Jakarta E10.
I think that makes sense
Yep.
to combine that.
So
Great.
so if a specification is not otherwise changing, but you're raising the Java source level to 11, I assume you're not going to make any sort of version increments in that specification?
That's what
You
I
have
would
to
assume.
do.
Yeah.
No, I disagree.
Then it's a good question.
Because from the DevOps angle of view, if you change the minimum Java SE version level to something else, it's a breaking change. So,
Well, actually, that I disagree with. It is a change. It is not a breaking change.
oh, it is. If you have a platform, a container base image with the Java SE in it, and it is 8, then it will not run and it will break. You have to, change your platform according to that additional level of platform.
Right, but that's not part of the definition of binary compatibilities of APIs, which is what we're using 7 version for.
Right. I mean, Jan, if something's compiled to Java 8, you can obviously continue to run it on Java 11, or we would need to re-release Maven Central like every 6 months.
Yes, that's true. But if you require that it will run on or could run on a lower Java SE version, then you allow Maven, for example, to use different target and source properties. And that's a pain if you have to use it and cannot use the release
But if you're going to
property.
If you're going to pick up this new MicroProfile API artifact, which targets Java 11, you're going to know that early in your build processes, and including the downstream DevOps stuff, that you have a change required. It's not like it's going to surprise anyone.
Yeah, but I just heard a key aspect. Jan, you're saying you're relying on the property of the MicroProfile API jar that says what version it is as a property in your own project. There's a source version and a compile version property, right? It's just a regular Maven property. There's one that's defined in the PALM, and you're using that in your project as your. He
But
says
that
it
would
doesn't
only be
appear.
possible if he inherited from the MicroProfile POM as a parent.
What it sounds like that might be happening, and he.
I think
yeah.
that's not necessarily good engineering practice.
That's what I would say, right? I mean, like, if people are doing that, maybe we should not set those properties and just hard code that in the plugin itself. Because,
Yeah,
there shouldn't
always
be-
if you what is addressed in the Java SE is you have these old properties to configure the source and the target level separately, and then there's the release property, which ensures a lot of additional things that work, and therefore it breaks something if you want to use it. And if you want to run it on a version that does not support that property, it breaks the build, basically. And that's really a pain in complex projects with a lot of dependencies.
Yeah, if you're relying on, any Maven property set in a MicroProfile PALM in your own build, we should make it so you don't even have the ability to do that. Because you shouldn't be relying on those properties. You should set your own properties.
Right. You're not talking about inheriting from the MicroProfile POMs as parent POMs, are you?
No,
Okay.
I'm talking about complex microservice projects that happens with Spring versions, for example, too. Even if you use a new Java SE version as a base for your image, and set something that is not compatible with that property on top of that, then it breaks. And then you have to switch back to different source and target level configurations in your own project.
I need to understand how it breaks. I can't imagine it.
Yeah, I'm not getting that either. I know that it's awkward to set the appropriate Maven compiler properties when you have builds that build under Java 8 and Java 11, but it can be done fairly simply. But if you're switching to use a new MicroProfile API artifact that targets 11, you're going to have to level up your entire build setup for all the downstream consumers to Java 11.
Yeah, but he's saying the reverse, that he has a target project that's based on 11, and there's a MicroProfile API that still says it's fine running on 8. And he needs it to not be fine running on 8 for everybody because he is running on 11.
Yeah, I guess I'm still not entirely clear of the build organization that we're talking about.
Same. Is it possible, Jan, you can, if this is important to you, is there some way you could show us?
Yeah, the problem is that was a customer's project, and I'm not with that project anymore. My contract has finished and I have no access to the source anymore. And
I mean, this shouldn't be an issue, right? I mean, like, if I create a Maven project that needs Java 11, I obviously have the ability to use jars from all over Maven Central that have been compiled to even Java, even Java 1.4, right? It doesn't mean anything. It just means that when I compile my own classes, they're going to wind up in 11.
Right, and all your downstream consumers will need 11 too.
Exactly. But I can consume stuff that's compiled to an earlier bytecode level. I mean, this is basic Java.
Right.
Bytecode.
Upstream can be older, downstream has to be at least whatever you're doing.
Exactly.
As far as I remember, when that property was introduced, I don't have the spec number in my head, but it must be a JEP in the Java SE version where it was introduced. There are some corner cases explained, and maybe I can find that for the next meeting, then we can discuss that.
Sounds good.
Right, so back to the, so I think then unless we have some compelling evidence that Jan can produce for us, we probably want to not.
There is a compelling, requirement, and that's module system. So if you build anything that requires the module info to Java, then any library on an older version is unsuitable basically to be used.
Right, but if we're talking about bringing them up to 11, then that module info is going to be fine. We're not talking about building mixed jars where they have 8 classes plus an 11 module info.
Okay, in that case, it's absolutely fine. Yeah, there is no reason
Yeah.
not to do this.
No, I think I was getting at the spec should have the same version, right? If the MicroProfile foo spec is at version 2.3, then recompiling the APIs for Java 11 doesn't mean it becomes the foo spec version 3.0.
What needs to be resolved is on the platform side. Once the spec uses Java 11 stuff, then you require all the TCKs. Well, you will require the platform to be at least 11.
Right, it's upstream
Right.
or
Yeah.
downstream.
And
Yeah.
that basically any specification that even still use Java 8 is not going to be able to certify on 8 anymore.
Well,
They're
the
individually, yes, they can.
implementation, but the apps don't need to change, right? That's the key point. And I think, you probably want to do this thing at a MicroProfile 6.0 or 7.0 inflection point anyway.
Yeah, the platform, like if you certify against a platform like a MicroProfile 7, you have to use Java 11 onwards. However, for example, like for tolerance, is no change, it still stay at the Java 8. And if some runtime just want to certify against fault tolerance, they can use Java 8 to certify against that particular spec.
Exactly.
Oh, it's not that simple, because you're also going to have to play with the dependencies, right? Because fault tolerance and pretty much all other specifications have a dependency across each other. So for instance, if you do have an update on MicroProfile config to 11, then either the other specs have to use an old version of config to certify on 8, or if you want to certify on with a new one, or if you want to use the new version of config, then you cannot certify them on 8. So it's
Sure, but if an upstream dependency requires 11, then you're downstream and you need to also require 11. So that's understood.
Yeah, just making the note that, I mean, you cannot look into these as isolated specs, right? Because we also have.
If they are isolated, if they're not, then yeah, you're correct. It's, like MicroProfile JWT doesn't have a dependency on config. So if it went to 11, it could, MicroProfile JWT could stay on 8. For example, we wouldn't need to do the work to re-release it. For that reason, and theoretically, if a spec is changing and upgrading its dependency, right? Like, so you said fault tolerance depends on config.
Well, pretty much, I mean,
Yes.
Okay, I just looking for a quick example. That wasn't attempting to start a conversation about that. So MicroProfile tolerance depends on config. It uses the version of config. The current released version uses a version of config that's Java 8. If it wants to use a version of config that's Java 11, then obviously we're updating the fault tolerance spec so it can say the different version of config that it's using. Well, we're already going to be releasing the fault tolerance spec. So yeah, it would be the ideal time for it to say, I also, because of my dependencies, require 11. But we're updating the MicroProfile fault tolerance spec in this situation anyway, because we need to specify the different version of config. So it's not like we're creating more work that wouldn't have already been there, you know. So it would be natural. We would do it without even blinking.
Yeah, it's just a natural change because you're picking a different version of your upstream, and so that affects you.
Right,
Yeah,
and
but-
you're changing anyway because you're picking a different version of your upstream.
Yep.
But to understand correctly, what do we do with the specs that don't have this upgrade? Do we also?
Yes, the upgrade will be required for any spec in MicroProfile, because as far as I know, basically all the specs do have TCKs that require config. There are requirements in the specifications, even though just written, that depend on configuration. And to write the TCKs, you need to use the config version that is part of the specification of a platform, which will be the latest config, which will, if it depends on 11, your TCKs will need to depend on 11.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah.
The root, where the root. So it's I think it's a kind of at the minute probably the there's no concrete plan to change config as yet. So if config stay as 8, and there will be not a huge impact. However, I think you're right. If it goes to 11, the kind of has a knock-on effect.
Emily, it's not true. If it's any part of the platform specification, it doesn't matter which one, as long as it's part of the platform, you need to change your TCKs, because otherwise you may not be able to run on, if it requires 8, you will not be able to run the whole TCK of the platform.
How so?
Unless we expect that they will work on 11 without any trouble.
That's what we expect.
Yeah, okay. If we expect that, then we should be fine.
Many of the implementations out there, you know, are also combined with Jakarta EE implementations, and on that side of the fence, you know, everybody has explicitly proven they can run on 11 with Jakarta 9.1.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, so that means the kind of we sort of kind of tentatively agree. We don't force the unchanged spec to Java 11 unless Ian told us otherwise, right? Unless Ian has a compelling reason evidence, we have to force all spec to move up. Basically, however, if there's a root, if like the central, like a config move to 11, probably all the others need to move to 11.
Yeah, and I had a discussion with one of the OpenJDK people a long time ago, and I asked them why they only do major releases for every, they don't have minor releases. And they say, yeah, we try not, but every time we break something, so it will represent the user expectations if they do Java SE major releases only and not minor ones. That is not true in all aspects, but some body of the platform on one side always has a breaking change.
Right. I mean, that's certainly been the case as they try to modularize the base and tease out certain things like the, Java X XML bind was a nightmare for many people. But hopefully those things become less and less, although it's hard to know that for sure since they're still trying to get rid of the security manager. So you're right, it may be a continuous struggle on the SE side.
Yeah, but also they have the every 2-year long-term support thing, which makes it survivable from an industry because a lot of people just ignore the versions in between and are essentially only experiencing a breaking change. every 2 years. We don't have that kind of cadence. We could, but we don't currently have it.
Okay, thank you. I think we have a really good discussion there. And then, yeah, we can revisit this, but for now, we settle for this tentatively. And then like the move on next, like in like a 2022 program plan, we said we want to do 3 releases per year. Now I think we have a room. We don't have like a February release. That's a cross off. How many releases do we want to do in 2022? Do we want to do 1 or do we want to do 2? And what kind of, I think is so far, like if we do like a July release, like we could have open API, JWT, and we could have a metrics. So it's
Now, are you talking at the platform level or
yeah,
individual
I'm talking
specs here?
about platform level. So
Right, just wanted to
two-
clarify.
Yeah, let me say platform. How many platform release? Thank you, John. So it's kind of like if we do a July release and then like a December release, I mean, what kind of the things we want to do? Is do we want to like do the alignment with Jakarta EE10, or we do alignment Jakarta EE10 in 2023? So we need to like think about this. And then also we have like telemetry. Again, we need to work out whether we have enough time to do like this release.
So I think where we left off, I think the last call was whether or not we had an implementation.
Yes.
Right. That could deliver 2 more this calendar year. I mean, from a project perspective, I think it would be nice if we could get, you know, a .1 release out and then have a major release that aligned with core profile this calendar year. I think it would be good for the project. Whether or not we could actually deliver on that is something that we would have to talk more about.
Yeah, so it's basically we need to like plan well advance. Again, like for the platform alignment, Jakarta EE10 alignment. So we have to see like in the Jakarta EE10 when it's released, which runtime we'll be able to certify against it. And then with that, we can have like candidates like to drive the December release out. If not, probably that'll fall into like next year. So far, probably we can only say like for OpenAPI, JWT, for this spec, they should go ahead to do standalone release, right? And then we can decide like when do we want to do the platform release.
Yeah. One question, is there anybody who wants to do a minor release, 5.1, with minor upgrades of existing specifications or adding a new one?
So I I have been tossing around the ideas. Basically, is if like we just say, okay, we fix a few add a very minor feature, which is different from like last year we did a 4.1. We have a compelling reason because Kubernetes release, we want to introduce that. And if now is like okay, OpenAPI add like improved like one annotation, or JWT introduced 2 config. How kind of I mean, when we cannot publish our release and etc., what do people feel? So is that worth the effort to have this kind of the manner thing? I think it would be good if we can like see something like why developers should be excited with this 5.1.
Yeah, Emily, just kind of curious, and I know I missed a few meetings too, so if my information isn't updated, I apologize. But I know there was some discussion about doing a 6.0 release in July. But then you're writing here for July, just the Open API, JWT, metrics, and the new telemetry spec that'll replace open tracing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we also discussed potentially GraphQL to become part of the major, the umbrella core APIs. So where does all that fit in? And if, do we have all the APIs updated for version 6, like 5 was, for example? And, so those are some of the things that are running through my head right now.
Right. Yeah, so it's basically we had a discussion about GraphQL, whether to merge GraphQL into platform. There's a kind of disagreement. So so some runtime does not want to put the GraphQL into platform. But we all get a different data point because one feedback is don't see the big huge consumption with GraphQL. So that would be still standalone. For the kind of the telemetry, MicroProfile telemetry, for the first release, that'll be a kind of you can release probably earlier this, earlier 2Q, hopefully as a 1.0. And then kind of when we have a new release, I think ideally if we do a MicroProfile 6 here, and with the Open API JWT, and also possibly metrics, and also the open telemetry, and the MicroProfile telemetry. So that's kind of will have a quite good, will generate some interest.
So a quick question, so the primary reason we can't release telemetry and open tracing in the same box is because they're both enabled by default. Is that my understanding? Is that a correct understanding?
Yes, correct. Because,
and a follow-on question of that is, I kind of have a bit of a I question if that is something that is a good practice going forward.
What you mean?
Well, because there are people who who do use other solutions for their tracing. And they may want MicroProfile config and they may want the JWT stuff, but they're using something else for tracing. Maybe they have already been using the telemetry specs and jars that are out there, right? Or they have their own solution that they created internally, which is a very common thing. And the fact that ours would be on by default and it is sort of, has the potential to cause them issues the same way that us putting tracing and telemetry in the same box makes issues. You know what I mean? We can't guarantee what they have in their applications already. I'll give an example. In JWT, MicroProfile JWT, it is not on by default because very commonly people will already have some sort of security mechanism enabled. So if they roll their application out onto MicroProfile and then we start rejecting their messages saying 401 not authorized because they didn't, because MicroProfile JWT says you didn't supply me a JWT, that would obviously cause a very significant breakage to just nearly all applications out there because they're almost always going to have some form of authentication already, and so I don't know if it's so safe for us to be able to just rely that no one has any tracing enabled already. And therefore, it's fine for us to have open tracing enabled by default because it's the only tracing in the box. Maybe this is the time where we want to just say, hey, I can enable open tracing with this annotation on my JAX-RS application class or something like that. Some explicit step that's spec defined to enable open tracing. And if we had that spec, if we had that flag, we could avoid conflicting with anybody's existing tracing code that they may have in their applications already. And we would avoid conflicting with MicroProfile open tracing. Then we could actually deliver telemetry inside the next MicroProfile release and it not be a breaking release.
Yeah, that's a good thought. So I think it's kind of but yeah, from the marketing point of view, if we say 5.1 has a telemetry, at least we can go and talk about it. And then probably kind of remove metrics so that add that in the next version, because that will have breaking changes anyway. So back to this model you are describing. So kind of you will say open tracing and open telemetry if it's all in the same platform release. So basically by default, open tracing is disabled, open telemetry is enabled. And then we want to promote telemetry. If some other people they want to continue use open tracing, they can enable it, disable telemetry. Is that what you are? I can.
Very close. It would be the reverse. So right now, open tracing is enabled by default. So for it not to be a breaking change, it would have to remain enabled.
Right, I see.
And
Okay,
then,
so
but telemetry would be disabled by default. But we would add obviously there would be a flag. A standard way. It doesn't have to be a flag. It could be an annotation to some standard way to enable it. And we would have some standard way to disable open tracing. And so, they could choose from what's in the box rather than just saying it's in the box, it's enabled, live with it.
Yeah, so that's something that you'll consider. I'm not completely against it, but I think another thing that you'll consider is the marketing aspect around open tracing, right? I mean, every time that we ship a new major release and we keep open tracing over there, it just seems that we're passing the message that we still support open tracing. Maybe we want to do that, maybe we don't, but from my experience, basically there is no one working on open tracing. Even for the implementation work for Jakarta, we were not getting any responses for their Git repositories because the committers are not there anymore. They didn't give permissions to anyone else. They're not responding to issues. They're not responding to anything. So I had to fork the code to upgrade it to Jakarta. I mean, do we really want to keep having open tracing in the platform and keep releasing with that inside when we know that's pretty much a dead thing?
I think Roberto, I think I read your line and David's line. I think it's for 5.1 we do this. For the 6, I also think maybe for 6 is breaking change. We can just remove the open tracing, but this could be the transition period. Get the telemetry auto door so people can start using it. And then you said, okay, in 6, open tracing moved out. And then telemetry will be enabled by default.
Yeah, I'm trying to say that we should probably not have things like that enabled by default and just have one little step the user has to do to turn it on. Just in the, so that way, because if everything's enabled by default, we can never come out with one, like I say, if JWT was enabled by default, which it is not, If it was enabled by default, it would break everybody who had security in their app already, because we would be stepping all over their security. So it's very wise for us to have it some little thing that the user's got to do to say, this is a feature that I want to take advantage of, and I accept all the consequences of enabling this, which means that, if I'm using some other kind of security, I'm going to get rejected because the JWT system is enabled now, and it's going to, require that all incoming requests have a JWT on them.
But are you suggesting that we do that for all the specifications, like health and metrics are currently also activated by default? So
it's something
I
we should
always thought that's exactly, yeah.
It's something we should consider.
Yeah.
I think Thomas has had his hand up for a long time. So
yeah,
sorry.
Okay.
I actually agree with this. I wanted to say that disabling open tracing itself, that can be left to the implementation. It doesn't need to be specified because in the end, the implementation knows what is available in the current runtime. But I do agree that anything that is impacting the the code in this way should be enabled through some means. Health checks are kind of different because to add a health check, you actually need to annotate your class. The only thing that's added automatically is the endpoint, and maybe we should introduce some way how to disable it into the configuration.
Yeah, I was going to say the same. Like in Liberty, you have to specify the feature whether you want that or not. It's the top of the hour. This is really interesting. I think with this extra thought, we could get 5.01 out with the meaningful content and etc. I think with this kind of switch and etc., we can continue the discussion next time. With that, thank you so much. I think it's a great, it's a great conversation. We are moving forward. Bye, everybody. If you are
Great.
to them next week, I will see you there. Yeah. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yes. Bye. Thank you, Ian.
Bye, Emily.
Yeah, bye. Thanks for typing.
Yeah.
I will see you in June.
Yeah.
If not before. Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.